good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to session 5B, where we're going to be discussing the bioeconomy. And this is in the framework of understanding how farming makes a contribution to the Fit for 55 package. We're going to explore a little bit what the bioeconomy is, what the relationship is to climate change and emissions, and how the change in agricultural practice might deliver some of these big climate targets that we're all working towards. To set the scene, I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker. That's Mr. Barna Kovac, who is the Secretary General of BioEast. Barna, please come over and give us a background to the session.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. Yes, everything is online. My name is Barna Kovac. I'm the Secretary General of the BioEast Initiative. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you very much for the organizers inviting me to give the steering speech. I will try to fit in my 10 minutes. However, yes, this session and the thematic, it's much more bigger, and the scope it's much more broader than to be able to grasp and present for you everything about the bioeconomy. Let me start with my 3 key points which we'll address today for you. It's about farming in the bioeconomy context. I would like to tackle a little bit the context of renewable carbon, the role of the renewable carbon, and before going to the political priority, policy setup, and the viable solutions, I need to a little bit grasp for you and present for you the bioeconomy setup. Let's start with the first part, tackling the farming, I mean agriculture, forestry in the bioeconomy context. Sustainable farming is an essential part of the sustainable bioeconomy. It's natural today, after 10 years of having a European bioeconomy strategy, to state this statement. However, I must say for you that in some countries still it's not obvious. It's not obvious that in the bioeconomy we are tackling the farming, agriculture, forestry, and aquaculture. Why is not obvious? Because in some countries there is not yet a bioeconomy strategy. However, let me just a little bit go deeper in it. Since we have the paradigm from the European Commission, which is saying that farming, agriculture, forestry, it's part of the bioeconomy, we should think of the farming system as an essential part of bioeconomy. If it's so one, then let me put a little bit further this point. What is sustainable farming? And if we think that we know a definition, I think we are wrong, because it's very difficult to define a sustainable farming, especially if we are considering the climatic region, the different climate regions in Europe, and the time frame when we would like to be sustainable. And in this context, let me a little bit elaborate more, because most probably if we wish to have a definition for sustainable farming, then we need to look behind the scene and to start from the natural capital which the farming is using, so soil, air, and water, and of course we need the sun to have those basic natural resources which the farming system is transforming and producing biomass from it. And here I am just entering in the role of farming, because yes, the current paradigm is saying that the primary production is the first step when we start to discuss bioeconomy. However, we know that we are not yet there. If we wish to have a sustainable farming system, then we have to go much more deeper. We have to start our consideration from the healthy soil, from the healthy air and water system, and that's where we start the processing. We start to process those natural resources. And in this paradigm, then the farming, the sustainable farming system will have another background. It's getting in another context. And exactly this context should be tackled if we start to think in a systemic way. Let me go further, because I have a few more slides and I would like to elaborate more on. then if we accept that the farming system, a sustainable farming system, is producing biomass from these natural resources, and if we want to keep this for a longer time period, then we have to think what is, and I put like essence of the bioeconomy. And the essence of the bioeconomy, what is producing the bioeconomy is using, is the carbon, the renewable carbon. Today, the fossil-based economy we blame because it's producing and emitting greenhouse gas and a lot of CO2, and of course also methane. And we are at the core of the bioeconomy, where we start to discuss that the bioeconomy is producing for us renewable carbon, which can replace the fossil-based carbon. And then, of course, the role of the farming in this context, on one hand, producing, processing, and storing that carbon. And this role behind the farming system, it's extremely important. What we will do and how we will pay for this produced carbon, how we price this carbon, still open questions. It's produced by the farms, but it's much more broader, this question, than the farming system. Now I can enter probably on the subject of the today conference, political priority, policy setup, and viable solutions. And I would like to tackle 3 issues here. On one hand, I would like to show you that why is important the bioeconomy. Without biomass, we cannot achieve the future targets. And of course, we have to solve some climatic problems, but not everything is in the hand of the farmers. Let me elaborate a little bit on the role of sustainable bioeconomy. I would like to bring here the latest foresight exercise, which was produced by the BioEast countries and the BioEast initiative, which is clearly stating, based on the experts and also public administration confirmation, climate neutral future depends on sustainable bioeconomies. If we would like to establish sustainable circular bioeconomies in Central and Eastern Europe, is decisive for achieving circularity and climate neutrality by 2050. This is from one part of Europe, but if I am going further and if I'm showing to you the Green Deal, the Green Deal related strategies, we have to admit that in all the strategies is there the biomass. It's related, the targets are related with the biomass use, the biomass processing. And this is very important message because when we are reading from country perspective, from member states perspective, the Green Deal, the bioeconomy is not much mentioned. It's not yet there with a fully fledged bioeconomy. And that's, however, I know that for those countries who have a strategy back home, who have the national strategy on bioeconomy, for them it's not a question. But in those countries where there were not no bioeconomy strategy, sustainable bioeconomy, that's still a question what we do with the bioeconomy, and of course implicitly the farming system, it's not placed in the right place. If I'm taking now the CAP, the Common Agriculture Policy, of course, we have the 9 common specific objectives and the cross-sectoral, which is knowledge and innovation, which is very important. But if I am looking for bioeconomy part, it's put in a rural areas where the rural development, it's close to the rural development. Why I'm emphasizing this? Because if we are have the essence of the bioeconomy producing carbon, renewable carbon, then the sustainable bioeconomy should be placed almost in all the objectives. So we have to tackle the bioeconomy on almost all the objectives, all the objectives. And that's why probably when the member states will present their strategic national plans, we will see different plans. Some will tackle in a narrow way the bioeconomy, some will tackle in a much more broader way. And now we end with Fit for 55, actually the essence of today's conference. And let me show you, it's immediately showing me here the picture, the key areas. And of course, I would group them, the key areas, in 2 groups. On one hand, the CO2 greenhouse gas emission, it's one group of the key areas. The other group is the renewable energy part. And let me state here, it's very important that this package will have a push on a farming system. We'll have a push, and I am not sure whether the member states are yet ready to have this push. The farming system might not be ready because because I might ask this carbon, the renewable carbon which is produced by the farmers from a conventional system point of view. Why I'm saying this? Because we have to avoid the situation when the energy sector, the transport sector, those areas, the renewable energy, will claim, will ask for renewable carbon from bioeconomy, from farming system, but we still need to consider the food, the agri-food part, which has to be there, the already existing non-food elements. So we have to be careful and we have to tackle carefully this part. And I am ending with my last slide with the key elements for the next discussion, the upcoming discussion. So on one hand, food for thought. Farming is clearly vital, and we have to think in a systemic approach, because farm is already a processing sector. So the farming in the context of energy, industrial system is important. We have to have a national bioeconomy strategies. It's important. Then we have to pay attention when the strategic plans from CAP are coming, and the taxonomy regulation is not yet there with a clear picture on what the bioeconomy means for the countries. Another important assumption probably, and a parallel session, is tackling the carbon farming. If we have to think in a context, agroecology, agrobiodiversity, carbon farming, it has to be tackled together. We cannot separate those issues because the sustainable part of farming, the sustainable farming, it should come together in one. I already mentioned what could bring the Fit for 55 package. Soil, water, and air quality policy are the prerequisites to have a good and available and viable policy and policy setup in a longer run for agriculture. And then, of course, if we would like to grasp the renewable carbon from our economy, we need viable models, viable modern biorefinery concept. Carbon farming should be made in place, and also we need to bring those solutions closer to rural areas, because it's very difficult for the conventional system to understand what we are talking in a longer period. I would stop here. I am open for the discussion, for the session, and I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bana. I think you gave us a really good understanding of some of the basic principles of what the bioeconomy is and why it's so important. And I was immediately struck by some of the things that you said. You said that the producing, the storing, and using of carbon is at the heart of what farmers do. And of course, in my mind, I was thinking, well, I understand farmers as people who produce food, but I hadn't thought of them as key actors in the carbon cycle, which of course they are. Yeah. And you also said that the use and processing of biomass is in the center of all of the Green Deal targets, and that's why we need to make sure we've got a sustainable bioeconomy strategy to make sure that we can meet the Green Deal and link it into the Fit for 55. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
We're now going to hear from two projects that are active in the bioeconomy, and they're going to share with us some of the things they've been doing and how they've been meeting their objectives. So I'm going to start by inviting Joanna Ruta, who's Branches. Now the Branches project is one that is going to be sharing some information with us. It's a project that started 1 year ago, so it's new, so it's just at the beginning. It will carry on for 2 more years. Joanna, are you with us? Hello, Joanna. Can you tell me a little bit more about your project? I know that it's in sustainable biomass supply chain development, mostly in the forestry sector, but that's just a series of words. That doesn't really help me understand what it is you're doing. Tell us what your project's about.
This is coordination and support action with 12 partners from 5 different countries. And it's not only forestry, but also agricultural biomasses, biogas, bioeconomy in general. And our aim, which I have here today, is really relevant. Our aim is to improve the connection between research and practitioners, because there is plenty of studies which has been published in peer review journals, and a significant part of that valuable information is in danger to remain untapped due to insufficient communication between experts and practitioners, who are the potential end users of that valuable information, like farmers and foresters and entrepreneurs. And knowledge from European and national projects, alongside that gathered also from practitioners, will be summarized as practical abstracts in English in form which is easy to understand and are targeted to practitioners. And then we produce specific visual fact sheets, and they will be produced and translated in local languages. And those fact sheets we will disseminate actively. And we present them, for example, in workshops, and we are getting straight feedback from the field. And we also ask from practitioners which of those summaries are so interesting that they want to have more in detail information about them. And then we will also show those, for example, new practices or new innovations in practice to specific showcase days. This is what Practice is in very, very shortly.
Excellent, thank you. So if I've understood it correctly, you're producing information materials that are adapted to the users in their local language, that give them an idea about innovation and best practices that they could use to make sure that what they're doing in their everyday work in their forestry and agriculture and other areas is sustainable. Is that correct?
Yes. Just like that we want that what different solutions and different findings we have done in research, we want that they come to practice, they come to field, and people use them, those solutions.
Thanks, Joanna. Can you give us again a sense of who the users are? Are they large-scale farmers? Are they small farms? Are they people who farm just at the weekend? Just help us understand who's interested in learning more about how to improve the way that they work.
Well, we have now established national networks in all of the partner countries, and we have very large scale of interested people. We have small scale farmers and foresters, but we have also entrepreneurs, for example, along the supply chain, all kind of small SMEs, but also large scale practitioners which are working with large scale. So quite different. Then we have people from administration and communities and very policymakers. Very many kind of people has been interested, and we have already gathering quite much people in all of those national networks.
Great. And so I think you've answered one of the points that came up before the lunch break, where we heard from our farmers talking about the importance of innovation and sharing knowledge and how to learn and adapt to what they're doing. So what kind of results could some of the users of your information expect? How would they expect more productivity, more profitability? What do you hope they would see as a result if they can apply the new knowledge that you're making available to them?
Well, there are plenty of new things which can improve the productivity and cost efficiency along the supply chain. We can't solve all the problems because, for example, productivity and this cost efficiency are the profitability in supply chains is the challenge. But we can solve small pieces. For example, new innovative machine in some part of the supply chain, we can present it, and some of the farmers or foresters or practitioners can take it into use, and they can read about our studies. We have always studies where our practical abstracts are based on. We don't publish anything which are not proof that they really work. And then we have also collected, for example, very interesting case examples about some hybrid solutions or self-efficient villages or then one solution, for example, to improve profitability is to improve the energy efficiency in the energy food supply chains. For example, providing knowledge and new tools that allow companies to find storage regimes that minimize energy losses or storage costs, and maximizing the net revenues and things like that. And also some solutions for digitalization along the supply chain, this kind of things.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Johanna, and we'll come back to you in a few minutes. But first I'm going to hear from another project that you were at the beginning of your journey, Johanna, in your project on branches. The next project, Enabling, actually finished last year, so they'll be able to tell us more about the results they achieved at the end of this. So let me introduce Carla de Carolis, who's the project coordinator for the Enabling project. And what we'd like to find out from you is your project was looking at sustainable biomass use for the exploitation of bio-based projects. First of all, tell us what bio-based projects are, and then what your project hoped to solve.
Thank you very much for these opportunities, and I would like to summarize the first result and objective of our project. The Enabling project has got the general objective to explore the innovative uses of the huge biomass residues, and especially derived from the rural sector, agricultural sector in primis, and also agroforestry and agro-industrial sector. Until now, most of the biomass is used just for the bioenergy sector, but most of them are still unexploited and could be used in sustainable conditions for interesting bio-based products before being used in the bioenergy sector. From our experience, we realized that the key operator of the rural sector don't know in depth the real opportunities given by this innovative bio-based products market through the exploitation of the rural residues. And for these reasons, the specific objective of our project were the first to fill the gap among the rural and industrial sector, and to give opportunities at hand to the several stakeholders of the project coming from rural and agricultural sector. Other important objective was to strengthen the capacity building of a farmer association, as well as the biomass key operator and the farmers, in order to ensure the integration of the best practices and innovative model into the routine deployment of the farmers. And at last, also to contribute to the spreading of acknowledgement about the new sector that bio-based product offers to different farmer stakeholders. And it's helping the farmers and agri-industrial business and enterprises to diversify their activity inside of the business, inside of the farm. And at the same time, it helps to increase the revenue stream and also to grow the sustainable condition from environmental, socially, and economical point of view.
Thanks. You mentioned that you were the first project to bring the industrial sector closer to the rural communities. And again, we spoke this morning about how important it is to maintain economic opportunity for the farming communities in rural areas. Can you tell us some of the results that you achieved in your project?
Yes, the first results of our project, we reached the different results of our project thanks to implementation of several tools, the very important tools that now are available for different stakeholders and the farmers. The first, we developed, for example, the common methodologies and the process flow platform for biomass identification, and also highlight the potential uses for specific bio-based products. For example, linking the conversion indexes between the typical biomass residues and the potential bio-based chemical building blocks or bio-based product that is possible to have, for example, lactic acid, citric acid, and other kind of compounds And we also focus the attention on the biomass represented by residues of crops and byproduct derived from agro-industrial product and not primary crops. This one is a key, important key factor. It was important. Was very important factor in order to avoid the potential competition with the food market. Other important results that we have received, we reached with in our project, it was to create the best practice packages that also in this case we have the package is available for our stakeholders. And we identified at the European level the most and promising good practices and interesting model business to be that is possible to replicate in different rural area across the inside of Europe and also in other countries outside of Europe. Other results very important for several stakeholders. We implemented the biomass trade platform that is available for both biomass suppliers, for example, the farmers, and at the same time for the final users, industrial or other kind of entrepreneurs, which aims to kick off the first business action in the for implementation of the new bio-based product chain. At the same time, we have also implemented more than 19 coaching and brokerage services, and especially aimed at the farmer and the rural operator for sharing and acknowledgement and giving also assistance and support to the farmer for different giving key information related to the biomass exploitation. For example, thanks to this kind of brokerage and coaching services, we have created a startup. It was an unexpected result of the project, but it was possible to create the startup of the end of the project. Another important result, it was the creation of the best practice packages that are also available to the rural operator. And we have also created the information box, where it's possible to find more than 170 links with the project, interesting project linked to the bio-based product and the biomass project. We have also included more than 150 articles, videos, and reports that are available to the stakeholders community. And at last, we have also implemented several workshops, the webinar, and other international events by showing our results, by sharing the best practice to the stakeholder community. And also in this case, thanks to the workshop and the collaboration with other stakeholders communities, it was possible to give information for a creation of different operating groups that are funded with the European funding program.
Great. Thank you very much, Carla. And we're about to now go into the panel section of our session. And this is where I'm going to be asking questions to our experts, but also I'm going to be calling on you. So please go to Slido. So slido.com, and you need to put in the code AGRI Outlook. When you're in there, you need to select session 5B, that's the bioeconomy. And there's where you can put your questions, anything you want to ask or talk about in the bioeconomy. That's the place for you to put your questions that I can bring in to our experts. So joining me on the panel, I have Bana Kovac, who was speaking earlier. Joanna and Carla will stay with us. And I'd like to introduce one other member of my panel, and that's Oana Niagu from Copa Cogeca, who's also joining us on this panel. So welcome back, Bana, and welcome to Oana and Joanna and Carla, you're still with us. And we're going to be talking a little bit more in detail about the bioeconomy. Joanna, because you're new to the panel, let me invite you to speak, because you are going to give us a perspective from the farmers and foresters, but particularly from the trade association there. It's important to understand how much that community accepts their role in the bioeconomy, because it's moving quite far away from the things that they immediately might know about in agriculture and starting to look at these very big pictures around the carbon economy. Do you feel that, you know, farmers are very accepting of this idea and willing to develop the bioeconomy sector, particularly linked to economic sustainability?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much on behalf of Copa-Cogeca for giving us the opportunity to contribute to this panel discussion. It was mentioned at the beginning that we have almost 10 years since the first bioeconomy strategy was published. And European farmers and cooperatives, they have explain and show from the beginning a high interest on the topic, and we really believed on the important role that the bioeconomy could play, and it's playing already in tackling climate change, but not only, providing opportunities for jobs, new business in models in rural areas. So, and we have done this together also with other 11 organizations. We have set up a European Bioeconomy Alliance that was working hard since the strategy was published to promote bioeconomy in Europe. In the first, in the introduction in the plenary, it was mentioned that one of the priorities that we have in EU is to reduce fossil-based materials, fuels use. And we really believed, and I think there are very concrete examples that the agriculture and forestry sector, through residues, byproducts coming from our sectors, could have an important contribution in this substitution process. I think we tend to forget to talk about substitution, which is an important part of the discussions on climate mitigation. And this should not be focused only on long-lived products. I think it was stated in the statement from the head of unit from DG Klima. There are so many opportunities, and I will give only some examples. I mean, we were talking about biorefineries. We have biogas, but we have also packaging. It's an important part of greening our economies. Textile sector. If you can look at the innovative solutions that the forestry sector is providing in the textile sector, you can't believe it. So we have advanced quite a lot, and research and innovation played an important role, but also investments. And we need to make sure that this will continue also in the future. What we have to stress is that we have the feeling sometimes that we are starting today the transition to a more sustainable, climate-neutral economy. Now, this transition started a long time ago, and there is the efforts and the investments that were made needs to be recognized as well. And we need to make sure that we will provide to farmers, forest owners, member states, enough flexibility in looking at these solutions for a more bio-based and circular economy, and to go to this climate neutrality, to these ambitious targets on climate neutrality. I would like to stress also the role of cooperatives, because we talk about farmers, but we have also agri-cooperatives and forest cooperatives working closely and integrating farmers and forest owners in their activities. And this makes a difference in sharing added value, and also in integrating, as I mentioned, the agriculture and forestry sector in a strong value chain. And we have, I strongly encourage you to look at the work that we have done with DG AGRI. We had 2 important workshops in 2018 and 19, I think, where we have a detailed report with concrete examples from the farming and forestry sector and the cooperatives on what are the opportunities, what are the challenges of our sectors. And it is clear that there is still a lot of potential to be used, mainly in the Central Eastern European countries, and BioEast here is playing an important role. I will maybe mention 2 more things and then I stop because we can maybe have a more detailed discussion in the panel. What is important, and this is part of the research and innovation, but not only, it's to promote an active role of farmers in the projects. And we clearly see, and this is also linked to the EIP AGRI, that the multi-actor approach plays a crucial role. Without the integration of the ones that are implementing these practices and could benefit of it, it's very difficult to be successful. And the last point that I would like to mention is the policy coherence. We have a very ambitious policy on the table today in the framework of the Green Deal, mainly with the climate change and biodiversity. And we need to make sure that there is a coherent also view when it comes to bioeconomy. Because, yeah, we can hear from the climate perspective the important role, but at the same time, we see a little bit of, let's say, a challenge from the biodiversity perspective. And I think this needs to be more brought together and discussed because, as I mentioned, we have achieved quite a lot. And by maybe setting aside too much land or increasing too much the protection, we can be in a situation that we are importing products that are not at the high level of sustainability that we are in Europe. So I will stop here for the moment and I look forward to the discussions in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanna. And I'm just picking up on some of those elements that you mentioned towards the end, that there is potentially tension between our approach for trying to protect biodiversity and the climate and environment, and perhaps protecting as much land as possible. But because there's still a demand for products that are linked to that land, we end up importing things that we could produce in Europe, but we don't because we have protection in place. I'm sensing there might be some challenges there. And Bana, maybe I could open up that issue with you because Joanna mentioned that how important the bioeconomy is, particularly in Central and Eastern Europe, where there's more forests than in other parts of Europe. Can you pick up on this issue? Is there a tension? Is there a contradiction between our goals for the bioeconomy to be having a thriving local economy and then also our goals to protect the natural world, the biodiversity? Is there a tension there and how do we manage that?
Yes, thank you for the question. It's important and also a difficult one to answer in a short time. Yes, it is a tension because especially the farmers, if now I am more focusing on Central and Eastern Europe, are not yet there to understand the full scope of bioeconomy, especially that in those countries the bioeconomy strategy was not developed at national level. So the broad scope of bioeconomy was not tackled in a block, so the farmers, they might not see all the benefits where they are in this context. And most probably also when we start to discuss and specifically on biodiversity, on the sustainability issues, they are afraid that what will come for them and whether it's in their hand or somebody's other hand who is defining what they should do and how they know. And I fully agree with what was just said before. The farmers, the system should be flexible, and also the farmers could be flexible in some range, but there is a yearly production system, so they can adapt, they will adapt if the setup and the premises are properly set. And that's what we have to keep in mind, because I know that the difficulty also in the CAP discussions now in the past months, it was exactly because the greening of the CAP, how to include the biodiversity, but there was also the sustainable aspects of soil, air, as I was mentioning for you, the water part, whether it's coming to the farmers or we should tackle it in a much more broader sense. So I think it's key, this issue to be considered, and still there is a tension which we have to tackle, and bringing the solution closer to the farmers. So yes, we have some research and innovation. We have some aspects which were already solved with demonstration projects. We already heard here that there are several solutions, but those solutions we need to bring closer to the farmers. And sometimes even the language barrier is there, which we have to solve it. Thank you.
Of course. Joanna and Carla, I'm going to come back to you because my question is that picking up on what Bana said, how can we get farmers to have, and foresters to have a more active role in the bioeconomy? So, Joanna, do you want to go first?
Yeah, well, I think that farmers and foresters need much support and encourage to participate, for example, discussions with researchers, and we need their feedback as a researcher, that we can help them in their problems, and they also need encourage to try new ways to work and try new technologies, and I think that younger generations are more eager to try and participate, and we believe that with this kind of projects, for example, we have had, and which is going, we can try to activate farmers and foresters a little bit, and that's very important to get them to work together with research, because they need studied knowledge which has been proven to work. And then the other thing is that there has been a lot of discussion about those policies, that they need to be clear and fair to all practitioners, and there should be some kind of continuous policies that they don't change very often, because it's really hard to make decisions if you don't know what will happen in policy and what kind of support you can get and things like that.
Of course. Thank you, Joanna. Don't forget that we welcome your questions via Slido, so go to slido.com, put in the code AGRIOutlook and select our session, which is 5B Bioeconomy. And any questions or suggestions that you have to the panel, you can put them there and we'll be talking about them. Carla, let me come to you. How do we give farmers and foresters a greater role, more say in the development of the bioeconomy?
Yeah. And from my point of view, I think that the farmer as well as the forester can have a key role, especially during the first step of the whole chain, through, for example, the right creation of the critical biomass under sustainable conditions. This one is the key point that's very essential also for the good exploitation of the biomass and transformation of the biomass into the new bio-based product or in the bioenergy sector. Sometimes to reach the critical mass inside of the project represent one of the most barriers, the critical point for industrial stakeholders. Because they don't have an idea about how it is possible to collect, to plan and to collect and to storage the huge of biomass necessary for a successful project. But at the same time, one of the most challenges for the farmer is represented by the management of the management of resources, but at the same time also the management of the human capital, and especially when of the young farmer generation that should be well training with the right skills by using interdisciplinary approach. When we talk about bioeconomy and the sustainable condition to the local farmer, sometimes it's difficult to share this information and for the local farmer, because it's necessary to share. They have to skill different skill from that, including the chemical and biological and engineering skills that sometimes it's very difficult to share the interdisciplinary approach. For 2 reasons, I think that it's necessary also to give the right training and the right information starting from young generation.
Thank you. We've already had a question in from the audience that I think is a great one for us to discuss as a panel, because the audience says, what is the role for forest biomass in a future bioeconomy by 2030? So, Oana, maybe I'll come to you first, because as you said, you've had an active bioeconomy alliance for a while now. In your perspective, what is the role of forest biomass in a future bioeconomy?
I think the key role that I mentioned also at the beginning, and that we tend to forget because we had a new forest strategy that was published in July this year, and was we had a lot of critics on it, not only from stakeholders but also from member states, is that it's lacking this part. The important role of the forest sector in the European forest sector, and sustainable and active and sustainable forest management in bioeconomy. And I have mentioned the cooperatives. I mean, I think Joanna knows very well the cooperatives in Finland, but in Sweden, and not only in other parts of Europe. What is the role of forest biomass when substituting fossil-based products? And I have mentioned packaging, textiles, but there are a lot of innovative products, and that are, I mean, when you look at the also at the environmental benefits, at the circularity and the use of resources, I think you can't even compare with fossil-based products. So I think the forest sector plays a key role, and we can do it. I mean, the environmental, social, and economic aspects that are part of the sustainable forest management can, let's say, ensure that all aspects linked also to biodiversity protection, creating jobs, could be addressed at the same time. We always said that forests play a multifunctional role, and this is something that we need to better promote and recognize in Europe, what we have achieved, as I mentioned, and what is the potential for the future, not only in these countries that I mentioned, but also in the Central and Eastern European. And it was at the construction sector, it's also these long-lived products, building and construction. It's an important part of the discussion as well. Greening our cities, you can see more and more wooden buildings in the cities. This is an important part, and this can be done, as I mentioned, in a sustainable manner. Forests in Europe are growing, and we have very good systems in place at national level to make sure that this is it's coming from sustainable sourcing. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Bana, let me turn to you. What, from your perspective, and you have this very strong base in Central and Eastern Europe where there's a lot of forests. So here, what do you see as the role for forest biomass in the future bioeconomy?
Thank you for the question. I see in the same way as Joanna was presenting in general terms. But let me just again emphasize, we have a Fit for 55 package with the two major elements. On one hand, they are looking for the biomass as a CO2 emission reduction. On the other hand, storage and there is where the key role could play forestry biomass. And then it's an renewable energy sector. But again, I would like very much to emphasize here that for the future, it's key the sustainability. And here in Central and Eastern Europe, where we still need, on the one hand, to have to ensure this sustainable aspect, which can have the forestry. On the other hand, I see as a key importance that to start to think also in terms of the whole value chain, because some might happen that there will be a big push and requests from the energy sector, from the transport, from those big sectors to the renewable carbon which the biomass can provide. And most probably this push will go towards the forestry sector immediately in the coming years. And then we have to ensure that the sustainable forest management is there, not just in Central and Eastern Europe, but I think we have to think in Europe and of course globally to those aspects. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanna, I'm curious about something, because in your project you talked about creating information and materials to go to the farmers and the forestry sector to help them understand the different practices and innovations they can do. So that's sort of going from you to them. I'm interested in whether you had requests from some of these other sectors that we've just heard from Bana, energy, transport, we heard from Joanna, it's packaging and textiles. Have you got other sectors that are waking up to the potential of forestry and agriculture to support their circular economy? And are they coming to you to find out how to engage with the forestry sector?
Yeah, we have also taken into our project some interesting new opportunities. For example, to farmers and forest owners to get additional income. There is, for example, very small things, but for example, forest products as sap and resin and shaka mushroom and this kind of small things, which are all bioeconomy. Quite small scale, but they can be very interesting additional income to the foresters and farmers. But you didn't ask that, but I want to also say something about this forestry in next decades, because I have been a little bit worried about acceptability of use of wood, because it's really amazing raw material. As Anna and as everybody has said, we have huge potential. It's really can replace many products which are based on fossil fuels, fossil raw materials now. We can replace plastic and there are really much valuable components to use in chemical industry and in really huge potential and really many ways to utilize wood. So we really need to work for that acceptability of use of wood stays, that we don't lose that one.
Joanna,
Thank
can
you.
I just pick up on that, because my background is I spend a lot of time working in public health. And of course, from a health perspective, the one thing we want to stop doing is burning wood, because people who have wood on the indoor fires, it's a major source of indoor air pollution. In parts of the developing world where wood and charcoal is used to cook food, it's the biggest source of pollution that kills women and children in the homes. So I'm really interested in picking up on this issue. You said we need to rehabilitate and look at the acceptability of wood, and it's got such a potential, but not looking at just as something to burn, to cook with, but actually to involve it in quite sophisticated industrial processes. Can you comment on that?
Yes, absolutely. But of course, this burning of wood is also very important. We live there in Nordics, and there is now at the moment 20 degrees, minus 20 degrees. So we need also wood for burning, but there is really good technologies at the moment. They have developed really much, and we can decrease all the pollutions with new technologies. Of course, it takes time to change all the ovens in the households, but it's possible. But I agree totally that we need to utilize wood for those replacing fossil raw materials and take the valuable components and things like that. Not burning. It's the last purpose to use wood, of course.
It's too valuable to burn, because there are so many other things we can do with it. As we're coming to the last few minutes of our panel, what I'd like you all to do is to think of one thing that you think people should know about the bioeconomy, because it's a concept that not many people outside of the groups that work in it know about it. So everyone, could you think of one thing that you think people should know about the bioeconomy? And Barna, I'll start with you. What's the one thing people should know?
One thing the people should know, I think I mentioned already, the renewable carbon. The bioeconomy, and through the bioeconomy, it's possible to produce, process, and also store the renewable carbon if it's well prepared and well managed. So I think that's the key issue here, that we can replace part of fossil-based carbon with renewable carbon from bioeconomy. Just it has to be strategically think over and also put an action plan behind to avoid some misperception and misuse of it. Thank you.
Excellent. That's a great message. And I can tell you that I'm going to use that to feed back to the plenary when they ask me what we talked about in bioeconomy. The fact that, in fact, there's a huge potential for the bioeconomy to be looking at renewable carbon, producing, using, and storing it. Joanna, Carla, and then Oana. And just please, in 1 minute, if you could.
Okay, just we have to think very widely. Bioeconomy is very, very large issue, and we have to take multiple components. We have utilized everything. We have diversified our thinking. That's my message.
Excellent, thank you. Carla.
Yes, also from my point of view, the bioeconomy is a very large context, and we have to solve the problem thinking the different point of view, chemical and the scientific and the political and social, environmental point of view. And for these reasons, it's necessary to collaborate into the cluster with a different approach, top down and bottom up.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Oana, close off our session with one thing that people should know about the bioeconomy.
I will maybe turn a little bit the question, stressing one important point that I wanted to mention. I mean, what we need to know is that there are a lot of, let's say, resources that could be better used in a more efficient way. And here I'm also talking about funding. I mean, it's not only about CAP, it's also about research and innovation, Horizon Europe, but it's also about rural areas. It's about infrastructure, broadband. All these pieces together, they can make a stronger bioeconomy in Europe and helping more the rural areas to contribute to it and also benefit from it. So this policy coherence and funding coherence, it's key, together with the skills, advisory service, knowledge exchange. And this year, I think today we had very good examples of the projects that we can all benefit from it. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We've come to the end of our conversation on bioeconomy. I'd like to thank my speakers, to Barna, to Oana, to Joanna, and to Carla. Thank you to you for participating online and watching this. We're now going to close this session and we're going to return to the plenary, where you'll have a chance to hear me sum up this conversation and a little bit of the highlights of the other parallel sessions. Thank you and see you next door.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the coordination.
My pleasure, thank you.
At one point, I was afraid that I was running out from 10.